Imagine this. It's the year 1898. A little-known book hits the shelves. The author, Morgan Robertson. The title, Futility or the Wreck of the Titan. The story, a massive ocean liner, the most luxurious in the world, departs from England, heading for New York. On its maiden voyage, it strikes an iceberg in the North Atlantic and sinks. Almost everyone dies due to a shortage of lifeboats. A terrible tragedy, but just fiction. Now fast forward to April 1912. The Titanic, a symbol of modern engineering, sets sail from England to New York. You know the ending. Iceberg, sinking, a matter of hours, thousands dead, and not enough lifeboats. The similarities between the Titan and the Titanic are chilling, nearly identical size. Both were deemed unsinkable. Both collided with icebergs in the same part of the Atlantic in April, and both lacked enough lifeboats. Coincidence? Maybe, but the name stands out too. Titan, Titanic. Was Morgan Robertson just a writer, a visionary with technical insight, or was there something more? What if certain coincidences aren't so random after all? What if they're part of something bigger? For centuries, we've been taught to see the universe as a machine, cause and effect, action and reaction. But sometimes something breaks that pattern, something like the Titan and the Titanic. A story that seems to whisper, maybe something is watching or responding. This isn't magic. It's an idea gaining ground in both philosophy and science. Synchronicity, meaningful coincidences. Events with no clear cause, but perfectly timed for the person experiencing them. Carl Jung described it as a connection between events with no causal link, but full of meaning. What if reality isn't just a sequence of outside events? What if, on some subtle level, your thoughts and emotions influence the world around you? Imagine that reality isn't a stage, but a mirror. In this video, we'll explore what synchronicity is and how it differs from ordinary coincidence, how ancient cultures saw the mind as a creative force, what modern science is discovering about consciousness and matter, real-life cases of impossible predictions, and finally, practical tools you can use to test this for yourself. If the universe is responding, what are you saying to it? Have you ever thought about someone and seconds later they send you a message? Or had a dream with a symbol, a song, a word, and the next day it shows up in a conversation, on the news, or even painted on a wall? And then you think, what a coincidence. But is that all it is? Coincidences happen all the time, but sometimes they feel charged with meaning, as if they were tailored just for you. That's where the concept of synchronicity comes in. A coincidence, in the usual sense, is when two events cross paths by chance, like wearing the same shirt as a friend, or running into someone at a restaurant, or seeing a number repeat. Life is full of random events, nothing more. But synchronicity is different. It's when a coincidence hits you emotionally, when it feels purposeful, even if it doesn't make rational sense. The term was coined by Carl Jung, but before we talk about him, let's look at your own experience. Imagine you're going through a hard time, full of doubt, feeling lost. Then you turn on the TV and someone says exactly what you needed to hear. Or you randomly open a book and the answer's right there. Or you meet someone in an unlikely situation who offers the exact help you were looking for. Luck, or is life responding? From a scientific perspective, it's hard to measure this kind of phenomenon. There are no instruments that detect this kind of connection, but the effects can be felt. People who go through this know something special happened, that it was too meaningful to be just chance. Author Deepak Chopra puts it this way: synchronicity is the universe reflecting what's happening inside you. Think of something simple. You're driving, worried about a big decision, and on the radio someone says, "Trust yourself. The path is opening." That phrase on its own is generic, but in that moment it hits you like it was made for you. Coincidence? Maybe, but the meaning isn't in the event, it's in your perception. What if these messages are real because you interpret them as real? What if consciousness is the lens that shapes the world? One theory says synchronicity happens when we're emotionally tuned in. You didn't attract the event, You simply noticed it. But some go further. Maybe you're co-creating it. Your focus, your intention, your emotion, shaping reality in real time. Maybe reality isn't random, but an intelligent field that responds to you. In synchronicity, a signal, a reply. But before we get to the science, let's go back to the beginning, because this idea was already known to ancient cultures, and that's where we'll start next. Imagine living in a world where the sky isn't just the sky, where the wind carries answers, where dreams shape landscapes and words create matter. For many ancient cultures, this wasn't fantasy, it was reality. Since the earliest times, civilizations around the world didn't see reality as something fixed or separate from consciousness. On the contrary, the world was a living reflection of the mind and spirit, and this worldview was practical. Science, spirituality, and survival were deeply intertwined. Let's visit some of these cultures, and maybe remember something we've forgotten. Australian Aboriginals, the dream time. For the indigenous peoples of Australia, the everyday world is just a surface layer. Beneath it lies the dream time, a sacred space-time where everything is continuously being created. This dream time isn't about sleep. It's a living dimension where the ancestors imagined the world into being. Mountains, rivers, stars. Everything emerged from the conscious dreaming of ancient beings, and the dream continues through us. In other words, reality is an ongoing story, and we are all storytellers and creators within it. Andean shamanism, Pacha, and unity. In the Andes, indigenous peoples have a concept called Pacha, which means land, time, and reality all at once. There's no separation between the physical and the spiritual. Everything is interconnected across simultaneous layers of existence. What you feel shapes what you see, and what you see reflects what lives within you. A shaman doesn't heal from the outside. They align the worlds, inner and outer, to restore the natural flow. And synchronicities are seen as portals, signs that the worlds are in dialogue, messages from the invisible manifesting in form. If a stone appears in your path, or an animal suddenly shows up, the shaman doesn't ask, "Why did this happen?" but rather, "What is this showing me about myself?" Ancient Egypt, the power of the word. In the Egypt of the pharaohs, words weren't just for communication. They were tools of creation. It was believed that the universe was born through the divine word. God spoke, and the world came into being. The word, called Hu, held the power to shape reality. To speak with intention was to make something real. Priests trained for years to use words with precision. They knew that sound and intention could move actual energy. This idea echoes modern concepts like vibration, frequency, and resonance, and it appears in many traditions. In Genesis, "Let there be light," and there was light. In Hinduism, the universe was born from the sound Om. In Sufism, God said, "Be," and it was. The pattern is clear. Consciousness, expressed through intention, emotion, or word, brings the world into form. The mirror of the world. If so many cultures believe the outer world reflects the inner one, what does that tell us about synchronicity? Maybe it's not a statistical fluke, but a reminder that we're deeply connected to everything around us. As Hermetic wisdom says, "As above, so below. As within, so without." If the world responds to your vibration, then synchronicities are echoes of your consciousness. Subtle confirmations that the universe is listening. And perhaps the most remarkable thing, cultures separated by time and distance came to the same conclusion. The world isn't something you just observe, it's a mirror of who you are. But is this just poetic philosophy? Or is modern science beginning to hear the same whisper? For centuries, science avoided anything that resembled magic or mysticism. And that made sense. The Enlightenment was born to break away from superstition. But in the 20th century, something curious happened. While telescopes explored outer space and microscopes delved into the invisible, a new revolution quietly emerged. The idea that mind and matter might be intertwined. And it all began with an unlikely encounter. Carl Jung and Wolfgang Pauli, an unusual friendship. On one side, Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist, explorer of the unconscious, and the creator of the concept of synchronicity. On the other, Wolfgang Pauli, an Austrian physicist, Nobel Prize winner, and pioneer in quantum physics. Two very different worlds, but it was Pauli who sought out Jung, troubled by strange dreams and unexplained events. He wasn't just looking for analysis. He wanted to know if there was a bridge between the symbols of the mind and the structure of the universe. From their collaboration came a bold hypothesis. Consciousness is not separate from the physical world. It might be entangled with it, and even capable of influencing reality. Pauli believed physics had not yet reached its deepest layer, the relationship between the observer and the observed. Jung saw synchronicity as a glimpse of a hidden link between mind and matter. They proposed that some events don't follow linear causes. They happen together because they share a symbolic field. It's not X causes Y. It's X and Y happen together because they carry the same meaning. Which brings us to one of the most fascinating experiments in science. Be the observer effect and the double slit experiment. Imagine firing particles, like electrons, at a barrier with two slits. When unobserved, the particles act like waves, passing through both slits at once, creating an interference pattern. But once the experiment is observed, everything changes. The electron chooses only one slit. In other words, the simple act of observing changes the behavior of matter. This isn't magic, it's physics. But it raises a profound question. If the world changes when we observe it, what are we influencing right now, simply by paying attention? What if we're not just witnesses, but active participants in creation? C. Multiverses and the reality. You tune into quantum physics also suggests that all possibilities exist at once. Every choice creates a new branch of the universe. What if your consciousness could tune into a particular version of reality? Maybe certain thoughts and mental states align you with specific timelines? It's not that you caused something to happen. Maybe you stepped into a version of the world where that thing already existed. Instead of changing the world, you change worlds. Thinkers like David Deutsch and Sean Carroll explore this idea. Others, like Amit Goswami, bridge science and consciousness. Science doesn't yet explain synchronicity, but it hasn't ruled it out either. And now with this foundation in place, let's dive into real-life cases. Stories of people who, in one way or another, seem to access the impossible. Maybe the mind can reach places where time hasn't yet arrived. Have you ever had a dream that felt more real than reality? Or an idea that came out of nowhere, as if it had been whispered from beyond the mind, and later turned out to be so accurate it couldn't be just chance? You should know, some of the greatest discoveries in history didn't come from cold calculations. They came from dreams, visions, and intuition, from altered states of consciousness we still don't fully understand, yet many of us have experienced. Friedrich Kekulé and the benzene ring. In the 19th century, German chemist Friedrich Kekulé was struggling to understand the structure of benzene, a molecule that didn't fit the formulas of the time. Exhausted, he fell asleep. He dreamed of a serpent biting its own tail. When he woke up, he had a sudden insight. Benzene's structure was circular. One of the foundational discoveries of modern chemistry had arrived, not in the lab, but from the unconscious. Srinivasa Ramanujan. The formula genius Ramanujan, a young Indian man with no formal academic training, produced theorems that baffled Cambridge's top mathematicians. When asked how he discovered them, he said, "They are revealed to me in dreams by the goddess Namagiri." He didn't calculate, he saw the numbers, as if glimpsing patterns from another dimension. Today, his work supports fields like quantum physics and string theory. These stories raise a powerful question. Can the mind in certain states access something beyond time? Nikola Tesla. The visionary inventor. Tesla claimed he didn't need to sketch his inventions. He saw them fully formed in his mind. He mentally tested engines and machines with total precision before ever building them. He believed his visions came from a universal field. He often said, "My brain is only a receiver." In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. What if we all have access to that field? What if synchronicities are clues that we're already connected to it? Dmitri Mendeleev and the periodic table. After days of frustration trying to organize chemical elements, Mendeleev fell asleep. In a dream, he saw the elements arranging themselves into rows and columns. When he woke up, he drew what would become the modern periodic table. These aren't myths. They're well-documented cases, and they all share something in common. Knowledge came through expanded mental states, not through conscious effort alone. Lucid dreams, meditation, and the flow state today, we know these states activate parts of the brain that are usually dormant. It's as if, in those moments, we open a door to a greater intelligence. Neuroscientist Andrew Newberg calls them states of unity. Joe Dispenza refers to the quantum field of possibilities. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to pay more attention to your dreams, your intuition, and your coincidences. Maybe they're not just quirks of the mind, but answers, and maybe you're already tuning in. Now let's look at how to put this into practice with real tools that are already within your reach. So far, we've talked about dreams, visions, and coincidences that defy logic. But what if you could access that field intentionally? What if synchronicity isn't just magical chance, but something you can attract? Modern science, especially neuroscience and performance psychology, shows that mental states linked to creativity, insight, and presence aren't esoteric. They're trainable. Let's explore 4 practical tools to tune your mind like a radio dial, aligning it with new possibilities. A. Creative visualization. To imagine is almost to do. In 1995, researchers divided volunteers into 3 groups. One group physically trained their fingers. Another only imagined the training. The third did nothing. The group that only visualized the exercises gained almost as much strength as those who actually trained. The brain activates the same neural circuits when you vividly imagine something. To the brain, intense imagination can feel almost as real as action. That's why athletes visualize before competitions. CEOs mentally rehearse big presentations. Neuroscientists like Andrew Huberman recommend visualization to rewire internal patterns. But what if you used visualization not just for performance? What if visualizing a future reality with emotional clarity could reshape what you perceive and experience? Try imagining a meeting, a solution, or an idea. Feel it as if it's already happening. Feel grateful, as if it's real. You're not just preparing, you might be influencing what shows up. B. Flow state. Merging with the moment. Flow is that state where time disappears. You're so immersed that there's no effort, just effortless action. Artists, surgeons, athletes, and creators describe it as the moment when everything clicks. In the brain, flow quiets the prefrontal cortex, the judgment center, and activates regions tied to intuition and deep creativity. You do more with less effort. And here's the key. Flow is fertile ground for synchronicity, because in that state, you're not trying to control, you're collaborating. You're so present that you begin to notice what you used to ignore. Pro tip: flow happens when a task is challenging, but still within reach. It's the sweet spot of focused attention. C. Mental rehearsing, practicing the future. Joe Dispenza helped popularize the concept of mental rehearsal, visualizing a desired experience with vivid sensory and emotional detail over and over until your brain starts treating it as familiar. Over time, this rewires neural circuits, strengthens beliefs, and shifts unconscious patterns. It's like training a future version of yourself. And when that version starts guiding your choices, your perception changes. You begin noticing opportunities you once overlooked. And with that, synchronicities begin to appear. D. Gratitude in advance, feeling before receiving. One of the simplest and most powerful tools. Feel gratitude as if you've already received what you desire. Studies from the HeartMath Institute show this state creates coherence between heart and brain. It boosts intuition, improves health, and sharpens your sensitivity to subtle patterns. Here's a simple practice. When you wake up, take a deep breath. Bring a clear intention to mind. Feel gratitude as if it has already happened. Stay in that feeling for a few minutes. Then, just observe the day. See what unfolds. You don't need to control reality. You just need to align with it. Is all of this just a placebo effect? Maybe. But placebo is proof that the mind can alter physical reality. And what if synchronicity is the universe responding to your inner state? As if it's saying, keep going, you're on the right path. Now let's go even deeper. What if the mind doesn't just perceive the world, but actually influences it? In the next part, we'll explore experiments that suggest exactly that. We've talked about personal experiences, ancient traditions, discoveries through dreams, and tools to tune into synchronicity. Now, an unavoidable question arises. Is there any objective evidence that the mind can influence external reality? As unlikely as it may seem, maybe there's no consensus, and it's far from conclusive, but certain data, repeated over decades, is too persistent to ignore. Let's look at two major projects that investigated this with scientific rigor. The Global Consciousness Project, GCP. Imagine a planet being monitored by machines that generate completely random numbers, like digital coin tossers. These devices, called RNGs, random number generators, run continuously. In theory, their results should be unpredictable and chaotic. But the Global Consciousness Project, led by scientists from Princeton and other institutions, asked a bold question. Could collective human consciousness affect these machines? Since the 1990s, over 60 RNGs have been installed around the world. And during major global events that carry strong emotional impact, like the 9/11 attacks, natural disasters, or the death of public figures, the RNGs showed unexpected statistical shifts, as if humanity's collective mind had influenced something that should have remained random. This data is public. It's not definitive proof, but it forms a subtle, statistically consistent pattern. It suggests there might be a connection between collective consciousness and the physical world. When billions of people feel the same thing, grief, shock, hope, something in the environment seems to respond. The PEAR Lab, Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research. For nearly 30 years, Princeton was home to one of the most controversial labs in science. The PEAR Lab was founded by Robert John, an aerospace engineer and former dean of the university's School of Engineering. Its goal, to test whether human intention could influence physical systems, like RNGs. More than 2.5 million experiments were conducted. And the results? Tiny deviations, but statistically consistent ones, occurred more often than chance would predict. In simple terms, volunteers would try to mentally influence a machine to produce more ones than zeros, and the RNGs responded, not always, but often enough to puzzle even the skeptics. This effect was called the micropsychokinetic effect. One detail stood out. The effects increased when participants were emotionally engaged. Intention plus emotion equals greater impact. That aligns with everything we've explored so far. But does this prove we can manifest things with thought alone? Number. These findings don't confirm the law of attraction or promise any superpowers. However, the fact that physical machines responded, even slightly, to human intention changes the conversation. Maybe reality isn't as fixed as we thought. Maybe the mind plays a role in shaping it. Skepticism is healthy. Science requires rigor. But are we dismissing the strange just because we don't yet know how to measure it? Carl Sagan once said, "Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence." And the data from the GCP and PEAR lab, at the very least, points to something real. Maybe the better question isn't, is this true, but if I live as if my consciousness influences reality, what changes? If you think all of this is bias or self-deception, that's okay. Now it's time to hear from the skeptics and see what they have to say. Up until now, everything sounds almost magical. Premonitions, revealing dreams, strange experiments, reality responding to intention. But it's time to pump the brakes. The human mind loves to find meaning, even where there might be none. What if synchronicity is just a trick of our brain chemistry? That's where the skeptics come in. And they're not enemies of reflection. They're the balance that keeps belief from turning into delusion. Let's look at their arguments, because there's wisdom in skepticism. Pareidolia, seeing patterns where there are none. Have you ever seen a face in the clouds? An animal in a coffee stain? Or heard a song played in reverse and thought it contained a hidden message? That's pareidolia, our brain's tendency to see familiar shapes and random patterns. According to neuroscience, it's an evolutionary survival mechanism. It's better to overreact to a false signal than to miss a real threat. Today, this same instinct makes us find meaning in coincidences, which may be completely random. Confirmation bias. We see what we want to see. Let's say you believe the number 1111 has a special meaning. Suddenly, you start seeing it everywhere. But it was always there. What changed was your focus. This is confirmation bias. We pay more attention to things that support our beliefs and ignore things that contradict them. In practice, we shape the world to fit our ideas and then call it reality. Survivorship bias. We only hear about the hits. You hear amazing stories of people who manifested love or received signs from the universe. But no one talks about the thousands of times nothing happened. Only the success stories survive in the narrative. And when you focus only on the hits, even random events can seem miraculous. The illusion of control skeptics argue that synchronicity gives us comfort, the idea that the universe responds to us, that we have some control over chaos. But maybe that's just an emotional strategy to deal with uncertainty. As neuroscientist Sam Harris puts it, the fact that something feels profound doesn't mean it's true. But what if it's useful, even if not real? Even if synchronicity is purely psychological, it can still be valuable because it makes us pay attention, reflect, be present, and that alone changes how we experience reality. A pattern doesn't have to be real to be meaningful. Maybe the value lies exactly there. In the end, synchronicity is a kind of dialogue with life, whether internal or external. Now that you've seen both sides, wonder and skepticism, it's not about believing, it's about testing with awareness, with attention, and seeing what happens. If you've made it this far, maybe something inside you has awakened, a recognition, a subtle calling, a feeling that there's something beyond the visible. Maybe now it's no longer about understanding theories. Maybe it's about experiencing. Because in the end, the real power of synchronicity doesn't lie in formulas or inspiring stories. It lies in how you live your day, in how you feel, think, and observe the world. So here's a practical invitation. For the next 7 days, become a conscious co-creator of your reality. You don't need blind faith. You don't have to believe in parallel universes or quantum physics. Just pay attention. The 7-day challenge. Choose a simple, clear, sincere intention. Something like, I want to feel more ease in my interactions. I want to notice signs that I'm on the right path. I want to experience an unexpected synchronicity. I want to recognize a response coming from life itself. Nothing grand, just a direction, a quiet compass. Each morning when you wake up, take a deep breath for 1 minute. Let your body awaken and bring your attention to the present moment. Visualize your intention as if it's already happening. Feel gratitude, as if it's already on its way. Open your eyes, go about your day, and just observe. No pressure, no expectations, just presence. Synchronicity doesn't show up on command. It arrives when you're aligned. Tools that might help. Guided visualization. Find a short practice online. Use it in the morning or before bed. Vision board. Use images and words that represent your desired direction. Manifestation journal. Write present tense phrases as if what you want is already unfolding. Intentional meditation. Sit in silence for 5 minutes, gently holding your intention in focus. What might happen? Maybe nothing. Or maybe something shifts. You run into someone. You read a phrase that feels like an answer. You resolve something unexpectedly. And in that moment, you might wonder, maybe reality is listening. But this isn't about proving that synchronicity is real. It's about living as if you're in flow with life, not standing outside of it. It's about taking responsibility for the frequency you're putting out, not because you control everything, but because you influence your part. Maybe reality isn't a mirror that reflects, but a field that amplifies. As Rumi said, what you seek is seeking you. It doesn't mean everything that happens was manifested. Life is complex, But within it, there is space for conscious creation. Maybe synchronicity isn't about controlling the universe, but learning how to dance with it. And if you're ready, start now. Choose an intention, breathe with it, feel it alive, and watch what happens. Coincidence, synchronicity, premonitions, the quantum field, strange experiments. So many pieces, no final conclusion. And maybe there doesn't need to be one. Maybe the beauty lies in the mystery, in the space between what we know and what we sense. Today you explored the difference between coincidence and synchronicity, how ancient cultures viewed consciousness as a creative force, scientific discoveries that challenge conventional thinking, dreams that shape the world, tools for living with more intention, skeptical arguments that sharpen our awareness, and in the end, an invitation to live as if reality is a field that responds to your attention. You might forget all of this tomorrow, or you might let a seed take root, a seed of curiosity, of presence, of emotional responsibility. Because in the end, maybe it doesn't matter whether the universe responds. What matters is who you become when you live as if it does. When you act with intention, observe with attention, and open yourself to mystery. Life shifts, and now comes the question, if the universe were truly listening, what would you say to it? See you in the next episode.